Welcome back to the Damage Report, everybody. I'm John Iadarola, breaking down the news with journalist Jules Solzdaltsev. We now turn to Iran. Up until very recently, we had a nuclear accord with Iran to stop them from developing nuclear weapons. We have now, as a country, violated that accord and pulled out of it, which isn't a thing. We're just no longer complying with the accord. And we now want new things, new concessions from Iran to reestablish what was the status quo as of 2 weeks ago. So Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has come out with a list of 12 demands, and he says that unless Iran complies with these 12 demands, they will suffer from the severest sanctions in history. Now, we're not gonna go through all of the demands, but if we can bring them up, we're gonna touch on a few, because there are 12 after all. So things like provide a complete account of its previous nuclear weapons research, stop uranium enrichment, never pursue plutonium reprocessing, allow unqualified access. Those are largely what we had under the previous deal. But now there's additional things like releasing all US and allied detainees. I'm not actually sure how many there are. Stop providing missiles, no more support for various groups, respecting Iraqi sovereignty, support for all of these other regional conflicts that are going on. And obviously, I think we could probably agree with most of these, but this is a very long list of demands touching on many different things. So what's your take?
So I've said this ever since Pompeo replaced Tillerson, that all that Trump is trying to do right now with Pompeo's help is goad Iran into a war to hit right before the midterms. That my gut tells me that's the whole plan. I know that Trump loves war. He wants war. It'll help his approval rating. It'll help his electoral or his party's electoral chances. These demands, they seem reasonable, but some of them. But I don't think. I think this is like the first step, the semi-reasonable first step that will lead to more demands and push Iran to a place where they say one thing, or they shoot down like a surveillance plane or something that launches Trump going, well, we've tried to reason with Iran. Now it's time to declare war 3 days before the election.
And unfortunately, probably many in the media that's how they would respond. Well, he did give them a list of diplomatic demands.
It's a frustrating thing to kind of like to sense out as it's happening. And I'm really not looking forward. I was talking to my grandma, who is a Trump supporter, which is really devastating. And we were talking about Pompeo, and I said, Pompeo clearly wants to go to war with Iran. He's talked about it forever. That is almost like his calling card at this point. And she says, no, we're not going to go to war with Iran. I'm like, why do you think that? What gives you that thought? He's like, Trump wouldn't do that. And to hear someone say like Trump wouldn't do that about war is like,
yeah, I don't know what would lead you to believe that.
Yeah.
This is a guy who has described, maybe, he's described himself as the most militaristic person on earth.
And he did constantly say like, well, Hillary Clinton is going to drag us into war after war after war. It's like, all right, man, here, add that to your list of things you're going to do that you're accusing someone else of.
Projection is a hell of a drug. Yes, so I want to return to the war angle in a second. One of the problems, the fundamental problems I have with what is going on right now is previously we had looked at Iran and said, you are doing things we don't like. We don't like the centrifuges and the uranium. So here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna put massive sanctions on you. If you tear all that up and enter into this accord with us, then we'll take the sanctions off, and that's what happened. And then everyone, including the Trump administration, says they were complying with the accord based on the deal we had with them to relieve them from sanctions. Then Trump comes in and says, you know what, screw that, we rip up the deal, we're putting the sanctions back on you. Okay, so now round two, now we say, here are the things we want you to do, and unless you do them, you're gonna get massive sanctions. If you're the government of Iran, why would you comply with these? We've already shown you that we will not respect past agreements of sanctions relief in return for these things. So they could do it, and then Trump could just put the sanctions back, or Trump Jr., the next president, could put the sanctions back. I know, it seems crazy. Certainly not Eric, but maybe Don Jr.
I don't know which is worse.
Eric would be worse. But anyway, my point is we have no ground to stand on when it comes to entering into these sorts of agreements, because we've already said with the Paris Accords and with the Iran Accords, we do not respect these sorts of deals.
Yeah, it's not just Iran, you're absolutely right, that every country that looks at how we deal with other countries is gonna say, there's no faith here in the United States to honor any of their agreements. And that puts us in the worst bargaining position by the worst deals president possible.
Yeah. The art of the horrible, horrible deal. And also, look, we're not going to go through all these stipulations again, but in many of these cases, as a person who has no particular interest in the Trump administration or most administrations, I look at this and I think, so we want Iran, understandably, to pull out of all of these different conflicts, almost all of which we're involved in.
Oh yeah.
And yes, obviously in the case of where we have our soldiers, okay, we're gonna support our soldiers. But I'm talking about places where we're just helping Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen, or we're bombing various groups in different places. So we're saying we want you to pull out of conflicts that we refuse to pull out of, even though we have no understandable connection to what's going on right there, and are probably just making things worse by our presence while spending billions of dollars. That seems a little hypocritical.
I mean, any involvement by the Trump administration in any Middle Eastern conflict or any conflict is going to make it worse. They're not thinking from a strategic perspective on how to resolve the conflicts. They're thinking of like how to enrich themselves and get reelected, and that's it. Like there's nothing else on if nuclear war happens, if the worst scenario happens, they know that they'll probably be fine in bunkers. And that's the worst case scenario. So every step up from there is just them like, how do we get a little more money? How do we get a little more power? How do we, it's again, really disappointing and really frustrating, but not unexpected.
Yeah, and I think every once in a while I think of, so let's say he dropped a nuclear weapon on Iran or something. Like the craziest example.
Which is completely within the realm of possibility.
He could do it if he wanted to. He has the ability. Let's say he did that. I like to think, what would Sean Hannity's first segment be that night? do you still think at this late hour that he would turn against Trump?
No, oh my God.
If Trump nuked Mexico City, do we really believe that Laura Ingraham would say, oh my God, what have I been supporting? My eyes are now open. I see the light.
There would be wall-to-wall coverage of like Hillary Clinton's hairstyle in 1996. It would be like, how dare she do this controversial hairstyle while her husband was president? We'd be like, there's a lot of people dead. Her hair, though.
Yeah. Oh, the mainstream media is talking about the uranium in Tehran today. Well, what about uranium 1, huh?
Oh my God.
What about that scandal?
Oh my God.
But to return to the war situation that you were talking about, I have said multiple times, and I get scared every time I bring it up because I worry that Fox and Friends might not air someday, and maybe Donald Trump will watch this show instead. It shocks me that considering how little respect for Donald Trump and his administration have for previous norms and the people and the rule of law and democracy, that they have not yet used like a trumped up terror attack or launched a war. Like they've launched a few strikes, but those are like the go-to moves of wannabe strongmen who don't care about what actually happens. They just want to boost their approval ratings, and they haven't yet done that. Okay, but now a midterm's coming.
I kind of have a theory about this, which is essentially that the right really believes in conspiracy theories, and they think that there are these huge involved, and they think it's really easy to do. And I guarantee you that like Trump or somebody in the Trump administration has like gone to like the CIA or something and said like, how do we do like a false flag? And they're like, you can't. It's really difficult. We tried like one in Cuba and it did not work. And like it's much harder than you think. And like that's just something they don't understand is that like the reason that there aren't really like these high-level conspiracies like 9/11 being a false flag or something like that is because they're crazy difficult to.
They are.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can
to
exaggerate something. Like, well, I mean, first there was Operation Northwood or something like that. Now that didn't end up actually being pursued, but there's the exaggeration of what 9/11 was and what it represented. I mean, it was a thing, and they decided we don't just want to deal with the actual problem that led to it. We want to instead go to an Iraq. I'm just surprised that they haven't done something like that.
Saying,
but yeah, maybe they're too incompetent, or maybe they're too distracted by trying to they're so busy stealing money from the country that they're like approval ratings. I'm getting rich. I'm getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, I would be vigilant in the lead up to the midterms because that's the one place where because you're right, he does not care about his approval. I mean, he says he cares about his approval ratings, but
we'll see. Well, it's getting closer, so everybody be on the lookout.